Well, happy Thursday, everybody. It's good to have you all here for part two of our conversations from 6 Feet with Dr. Larry Michael. Larry, thanks for joining us again. It's good to see you in a new shirt this time,
Yes,
uh,
sir.
but the same office. You're coming to us from the same office.
Yes, I don't have all the virtual backgrounds that you've got, but
I haven't used them for this conversation. So, Larry, you're coming to us from Birmingham. Thanks for joining us, and everybody. Conversations from 6 Feet. This time is we're going to be looking at grief. It's part of a two-part series. The first one was on Tuesday. If you haven't been able to look at that, I encourage you to look through that. We're all going through some losses, and Larry talked about a few of those last time. But I think addition to some of the basic things, Larry, you know this is Holy Week. It's Easter, so we're missing our things as simple as an Easter egg hunt, right? Or
ah,
wonderful Easter gatherings that we're used to having. These wonderful worship services. That Holy
yeah.
Week is filled with all these kind of beautiful things. They have on the other side some real tragedies, like important surgical services that are needed to be put off indefinitely because we just don't know, and that's also something that we're grieving. And then even just real tragically, as people die, even without COVID, we're having to put off the funeral services, which
Yeah.
needs the proper kind of understanding of how we grieve and mourn actually publicly. So a lot has changed since this happening. I really liked how you define grief very simply as an inward process. As we try to reconcile ourselves with what is happening to us, it's that inward process. And one thing that I would like you to reflect on is, does that process of grief look the same for everybody? Is there a certain formula that we need to go through? Is it a linear type of thing? So can you help us understand that a little bit?
I think every person's grief is unique. And that has a lot to do with your particular situation and the kind of loss that you have experienced, which may be different than your next door neighbor or fellow church member. Your personality has something to do with it. Some of us, tend to get depressed easily, and others of us are more buoyant and are able to be resilient and go along. But other people, it impacts greatly, and I see this in some of my relatives, some of my family members, how they're reacting differently in different places, and it has to do with the uh, what are the ramifications of your particular loss. So you mentioned surgery. I know someone who had his prostate surgery delayed, and this man has had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he has cancer of the prostate, and it's been put off. I mean, that's big time for him, and other people in similar circumstances. So, we talk about the grief related to not being able to have funeral services. We had a young man, his grandfather died last week, and he is so upset because they're not going to be able to have a funeral. And some of the family members live at a distance, and they're not able to grieve in a normal manner. So that's another component of grief. So, you just think about all these different things, and people will say, well, I just need to deal with it. And yet, part of dealing with it um, may be realizing that you have to face it, and you have to allow yourself in the midst of this to see what's going on with you and your family. You got children, that how do you keep the kids occupied, and how do they handle these things, and how that all comes together. So, people are facing these things, and we have a lot of fallacies related to grief. Some people think it's a 5-step program, and it's not that. Grave is like a wave, it comes in waves at different times. And even after this is all over, some of us will have grief bursts where we relive the agonies and the problems that have been associated with this particular time in our lives. I mean, as a country, when have we experienced anything quite like this? I know 1918 there was an epidemic, but gosh, I mean, people I talked to in the 90s say, I never experienced this. So, I mean, like I said, uncharted waters. So, we, the Zoom meetings are great, bringing people together, pulling worship services together the way that you can to help people to cope. contacting people. I'm calling people, and I know you are as well. Hey, just checking in to see if you're okay. Can I have a word of prayer with you? Um, these connections are so crucial. Um, and again, people may be locked in their own little worlds and not know what's going on, and they are grieving. Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that you talked about, I think, Larry, was, and I really appreciate that. That kind of got me to thinking about this. Let's say we've got a family together, and you have one person who experiences grief one way. The spouse experiences grief a completely different way, and then you add to that the way the kids are experiencing grief, and it not everybody is experiencing it the same way, as you said. So, what are some fallacies, or what are some wrong ways that we think about? What are wrong ways to think about grief, so that we can kind of have some kind of common foundation there?
Well, I think one thing is, people might think, well, I'm a Christian and I shouldn't feel this way. And they feel guilty because they're upset, they're angry, they're having relationship problems in the home. This is not the way it should be. I should be praising the Lord in all things, to be content, whatever state I'm in there with, to be content, to thank God for the suffering that I'm experiencing at this time. And yet we know all these things in our heads, and yet experientially, we don't measure up. And there are times I haven't measured up. And so, I'm in a position where I'm trying to help people, but again, we're all, and I know that you have frustrations that you're dealing with, and we all do, and we have to figure out ways to get through this. Some people think that if you have questions about your faith, and then you're weak. No, that's not true. Or if you're crying about something, then that means you're weak. No, tears are healing agents, and sometimes we need to cry. Sometimes we need to emote. Sometimes we need to get it out. And if you have a friend that you can talk to, someone who won't criticize you or try to fix you or question you all the time, but listen to you. And that's one way, Tom, that we can help other people, even if we're experiencing certain things, that we can be a listener. We don't have to be a certified counselor to help people. Sometimes people are taking meals and dropping meals off, or sending cards, or writing letters. There are lots of ways in which we can encourage one another. And like I said before, a lot of this is acute, and it will be rectified. So a lot of these griefs, once this pandemic has gone past, but again, we don't know when that's going to be. But chronic grief is when something becomes long term. And, people get into situations now. Think about finances.
Hmm.
Think about people who lost their jobs. What if they don't get their jobs back? They're impacted who knows how long. Those are major losses. And the list goes on and on. So we have to help people to clarify what they're experiencing, come alongside the best we can, companion with people, um, and encourage one another, but also speak realistically and honestly about how you're feeling, what you're going through, um, and looking for ways to combat that, to be positive, to have balance in your life, to get outside. One thing I've noticed in all of this, we have people outside in our neighborhood I haven't seen for years,
Yeah.
sitting in their driveways and lawn chairs, and kids riding bicycles. I haven't seen kids out forever. It's. I mean, there are some positive things that are going on in all this, and I think we have opportunities as Christians that maybe we don't have at other times.
And I want
Uh,
to end on that, but before we get there, I think you talk about listening, and so are there one or maybe two or three points that would be good hooks for us? So what's a good listening question to ask, or how do we do that a little bit, just very quickly? And
well,
the whole course.
number one, tell me how you feel. What's going on in your life. How is this impacting you? How can I be of help to you? Are there ways in which we can help to make this better? Are you seeking support? Do you have other support around you? Do you have family? Is your family supportive? Um, can I pray with you? Can I come alongside and, just find ways to be there? Presence. In grief, we say presence is one of the most important things. And yet we can't be present physically for people, which is really awful. So we have to find alternative ways to be present, with people.
I have thought about it in this way, and maybe I'm just naive on this, but or I don't know what, but for me, this has been a radical illustration of I may not be able to be present, but Jesus is able to be present.
Yes.
And how we help people understand that Jesus is going through this with them.
Yes.
Is because he's the only one who's present, and that's yes. A wonderful gift to everybody.
Well, and especially thinking Holy Week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of all the weeks of the year that, Jesus said, take up your cross daily and follow me. Now, I don't know that there's such a thing as a happy cross. So what does that mean? How do we flesh that out? Why do we think that we shouldn't have to go through something? What makes us special? So I think in that sense, we have to go to the scriptures, read the Bible. What does the Bible have to say about this? Yeah, Jesus said, I will be with you always to the end of the age. He said, I came that you might have joy and have it in all its fullness. But at the same time, the scriptures tell us that we do experience suffering, and suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not disappoint us. I mean, Paul wrote and he says, we grieve, but we don't grieve like others who have no hope.
Right.
Our hope is steadfast and sure in Jesus Christ. He is a solid rock. And so we point people that, yes, there is hope and there is healing through Christ. And, just this morning in our Sunday school class, we studied Mary, the mother of Jesus. And when Gabriel appeared to her and told her that she was going to be the bearer of God's son, the angel said to her, nothing is impossible with God. And that phrase in itself means something to us. What is the impossible situation that you're facing? What are you going through? Where is your hope? And yes, I think praising God somehow in the midst of it, that God's in control. He's going to see me through. He's going to see us through. And we're going to come out of this better. I know we hear that. But I always like to believe that the best is yet to come. If not in this world, certainly in the next. So we're preparing ourselves. We're going to celebrate Easter, the resurrection of Christ. We are people of the resurrection. Yes, we're going to go through all that this week, but we are people of the resurrection. And that is hope. It's hope for now and for the future. And let me just say one thing. Look around you. Those of you who are listening, look around you. What are some sightings of the resurrection that you see right now? What are the evidences of life that you see, even looking around? Can you put your finger on those? Can you hook yourself onto those? Can you count a blessing somehow in the middle of that? Anyway, I don't mean to preach to you, but just want to be a purveyor of hope.
I don't think you can preach hope enough.
Well, no, God has the last word, and we know what the last word is. It's victory.
Victory. Amen.
And so we want to be victorious in Christ. So I love Tom, and I love your church and your guys, and I'm praying for you. And we just need to hang in there with each other, and understand that there are griefs that we have, but we will see a better day in Jesus.
Amen. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Larry, thanks again for joining us for Conversations from 6 Feet. This has been really a blessing this week. And everybody at home, thanks for joining us through these conversations. We will be having worship on Easter. Look forward to that. We have a special thing planned for that day, and we look forward to bringing that to you. Blessings on your day, everybody. Like Paul writes, be anxious for nothing. That doesn't mean we don't grieve when we grieve, but be anxious for nothing.
Y'all stay safe in Charlotte now.
We will. You too in Birmingham.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.